In Trump's latest cruel move, he plans on going after students' college debt, going as far as garnishing their wages, all while enriching his billionaire friends, whether or not it's granting contracts despite conflicts of interest or just giving them outright tax cuts. This and the Social Security Administration is delaying payments for not only for Social Security, but disability. Are Americans worse off under Trump? The answer is a resounding yes. My name is Dina Doll with the MeidasTouch Network. Let's break this down. Now, in terms of the student debt, we know that in 2020, student loans were paused because of the pandemic. The pandemic, along with the PPP loans and pausing the student loan payments, were meant to help Americans who were faced with the crisis of losing their jobs or having their jobs uncertain at the time. And so the government stepped in and tried to do the right thing. And then Biden, as we know, tried to actually just forgive these loans outright, and millionaires sued in court trying to stop him from doing that. And that did get tied up in court. Even the Supreme Court eventually saying that he didn't have the authority to do that by executive order. But these were still paused. The government wasn't going after defaulted payments. If the students were in default, they weren't trying to collect on it. So while they were trying to forgive it legally through the executive order, they were at the same time not actively going after this debt. Well, Trump is deciding now that evidently, our government needs this money so much that they plan on going after this student debt money. Take a listen for how they try to justify this.
In other news, the Trump administration has announced we will put an end to Joe Biden's illegal student loan bailout attempts. No student loan has been referred to collection since March of 2020. That comes to an end. On May 5th, the Department of Education will resume involuntary collections for borrowers with defaulted federal student loans. The student loan portfolio controlled by the federal government is nearly $1.6 trillion, but fewer than 4 out of 10 borrowers are in repayment. This is unsustainable, unfair, and a huge liability for American taxpayers. Debt cannot be wiped away. It just ends up getting transferred to others. So why should Americans who didn't go to college or went to college and responsibly paid back their loans pay for the student loans of other Americans? The Trump administration will never force taxpayers to pay student loan debts that don't belong to them. Student loan borrowers need clarity, and we're finally giving it to them. Borrowers will now be clearly expected to repay their loans, and those who default on their loan obligations will face involuntary collections. The government can and will collect defaulted federal student loan debt by withholding money from borrowers, tax refunds, federal pensions, and even their wages.
Now, Trump administration decides to justify this by saying that it is not fair for other Americans to pay down the debt of these students because they paid their own debt. Well, the example that's very similar to student loan debt is the PPP loan debt that kind of happened around the same time, you can say. And this, as you know, went to businesses in order for them to kind of stay afloat. But a lot of those loans, which you can tell by the name of it, were meant to be repaid, but they were never repaid. Guess who paid those loans? Other Americans, even those who didn't take out those loans. But did you hear a peep from Trump or the MAGA Republicans or other Republicans about how that was not fair, that other Americans paid off those loans? Well, you certainly didn't. For one, it's because a lot of Republican Congress people also had their loan forgiven. Let's look at the numbers. Now, in terms of the amount of student debt that was planned on being forgiven under Biden, or that they are going after now with Trump, it is about $10,000 to $20,000 per student, whereas the PPP loan is an average of $70,000. So even to that individual person, the amount being forgiven is much more. And then if you talk about the amount, the PPP loan forgiveness was huge. Out of $790 billion that was granted, $757 billion was forgiven. They sure found the willingness to forgive that. And in case you think, well, those went to the American worker also, as it turns out, 2/3 of those loans did not trickle down, let's say, to the paychecks. 3/4 of those benefits stayed with the top 20% earners. Like it often does in this country, the rich got richer. So for those people, again, crying about the student loan debts, those PPP loans that everybody else, including those students who had that debt, were paying off the debt of the top 20% earners, 3/4 of those. And again, there were quite a bit of Congress people who had their loans forgiven also. Matt Gaetz had $476,000 forgiven. Marjorie Taylor Greene had $180,000 forgiven. Roger Williams, $1.43 million in loan forgiven. Mike Kelly, $974,100 forgiven. Carol Miller, $3.1 million, all Republicans. That was what we were paying for. But all of a sudden, the students' loan is a step that these Republicans cannot take. This is the hypocrisy. This is the cruelness that somehow we need to go after these students. And they plan on garnishing their wages, going after their pensions. And this is at a time of major economic uncertainty. A lot of these students may have been federal employees that were fired, or in industries hurt by the tariffs that have already been fired or in fear of being fired. This is a time where grocery prices are going up. Housing is unaffordable. Gas prices are going up. And now they're going to have their wages garnished because Trump thinks that somehow we cannot forgive those loans, but we can forgive the loans of the top 20%, as well as all these Republican Congress people. And then, if that were not enough, as we know, our tax code always benefits the rich. In 2020, when you want to talk about the 55 largest corporations in America paid zero federal corporate income tax. If we're trying to collect more money, perhaps we should make them pay, because those of us are paying the taxes of the corporations by Trump's logic. I am paying for the taxes of Nike, FedEx, Whirlpool, and others. Certainly, that does not seem fair. And the amount of money that these corporations manage to avoid in taking advantage of tax breaks in the code is roughly $180 billion a year that the rest of us are paying.
As a kid, I loved eating cereal, but as an adult, I don't want all that added sugar, and most cereals don't give me the protein that I need. Then I found this amazing product, Magic Spoon. It's a nostalgically delicious cereal that tastes just like what you remember from childhood and all of my favorites, but it doesn't have the sugar and it has a ton of protein. Magic Spoon has also turned their super popular cereal into high protein treats that are light, crispy, and taste just like those classic crunchy cereal bars. Magic Spoon's treats are so delicious and have already become my favorite before and after I go to work snack. Love it. They're also good if you're going to go to the gym. They're fantastic. So every serving of Magic Spoon high protein cereal has crazy macros. There's 13 grams of protein, 0 grams of sugar, and 4 grams of net carbs. So they come in so many nostalgic flavors like cocoa and cinnamon roll. So I love it. I love the peanut butter one, the birthday cake, chocolate chip cookie, and more. So the high protein treats, they're crispy, crunchy, airy, and is an easy way to get 12 grams of protein on the go. So I highly recommend them. The dark chocolate treat, the crispy treat, is really, really, really yummy. So get $5 off your next order at magicspoon.com/misstrial, or look for Magic Spoon on Amazon or in your nearest grocery store. And that's magicspoon.com/mistrial, MISSTRIAL, for $5 off.
Let's talk about another cruelness, what Trump and Doge is doing to Social Security and disability. As we know, even before this, Social Security Administration was understaffed because departments in general, government in general, has always been underfunded, except the Department of Defense. So now we had it already understaffed and under-resourced, has had huge cuts in personnel. A Social Security administrator said that they are so understaffed, they have never been this understaffed before. And that is resulting in delays and missed payments to Americans who cannot afford delayed and missed payments. All the while, for Goldman Sachs to win billions of dollars in Trump's market manipulation, Trump doesn't care about the American worker, and the American worker is suffering. As we know, about 90% of Americans 65 and older depend on Social Security payments. They said that out of those, 42% said without them, they cannot afford the basics such as food, clothing, housing. Now, as we know, the Trump administration is completely out of touch about this. Their Commerce Secretary, Howard Ludwig, said that only somebody committing fraud would notice if that's not payment. We know that isn't true. But it's not just retirement benefits. It's disability benefits that are being hit so hard. This understaffing, they say that at least 16% of Americans may never get their payments at all because payments are missed. The applications are missed. But in addition to that, they are delayed. They say in Georgia, right now, it is a wait time of about 365 days and maybe even longer. Nationally, I'm told by a Social Security employee that it's 8 to 9 months delay to get your payment. So let's talk about what this means exactly. In order to qualify for disability payment, it means that you cannot work, that you have a medical record that says you are disabled. So you cannot work. You have proven that with your medical records, and yet the government cannot give you your payment for 8 to 9 months because of the cuts Doge has made to Social Security. How is that American going to survive 8 to 9 months without any income coming in? Most of those Americans will have to do things like file bankruptcy, which is not only bad for them, but is bad for the economy. And there is just the cruelness factor, because for one, that American paid into the disability. Unlike what Elon Musk says, this is not an entitlement. When we work, we don't have the option of whether or not to pay into the disability insurance program. We can't say, well, I don't know if I'm going to trust whether or not Trump is going to do the right thing. They take that money out anyway. And now when you need it, the government isn't giving it to you because Doge, the billionaire, richest man in the world, has decided that this is where he plans on saving money. Not in areas he's getting paid. On the one fist, he's getting billions of dollars of Starlink contracts. And on the other hand, he's taking away disability money. That is literally what is happening in America to people when they have qualify for disability are getting maybe some of the worst news of their lives. And not only is it the money that comes in, when you apply for disability, you qualify for Medicare much quicker than you normally would. And that's the health insurance that you need to handle your disability. So the government isn't just taking away the payments that maybe help your mortgage. They're denying you your health care. This is what Trump is doing, and we cannot let him get away with it in the darkness. But make no mistake, Trump doesn't just cut money from Social Security or go after students for loans because they're trying to collect money to pay off their billionaires, even though that's happening too. They're doing it to make us think that government is dysfunctional. They're doing it to make us think that government doesn't provide a service in our lives. Because for that American who's not paying attention is seeing that they're not getting their checks, their disability and their Social Security as they're supposed to. And they see those long wait times and they think, oh, government isn't working. Or those students who see the government garnishing their wage checks are thinking, this awful government is taking my money. This is also why Trump does it, not just to collect the money to pay his friends, because Project 2025 doesn't want government. And this is how you make Americans believe there is no purpose to government, is by making government purposely bad for the American worker.
Love this video? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch and help us blow past 1 million followers.